what's up everybody? Welcome back to the PTP Hustle. So if you're new to music production and you're probably super excited about getting started, there's probably a few common mistakes you can try to avoid when you're getting started with music production overall. So before you get started, there are a few common mistakes that you can avoid that help you make progress and not slow you down. So today we're covering the top 5 mistakes that new producers make and how you can avoid those mistakes. So with that, let's get into it. So mistake number 1, overloading with gear and plugins. It's really tempting to think about the things you need. You may think you need a ton of plugins and equipment to get started and make great music, but that's totally not the case. It's not true, right? So really to get started, you want to keep it simple. You want to start with essential gear, like a basic DAW, headphones, and maybe a MIDI controller. It's really what you need to get started. So now you started with keeping it simple, you want to master a few tools. Instead of downloading every free plugin that's out there, you want to learn to use only a few just to get started. Avoid plugin hoarding, right? Too many plugins can really overwhelm you and slow you down. So instead of focusing on a lot of plugins, you want to really focus on just a few. Use these along with the tools that you have to become very proficient, know them inside and out. Become an expert at these, right? And once you do this, it's amazing what you can create when you truly understand what you can do with the basics. All right, let's talk about mistake number 2. Ignoring music theory. Now you don't need a music degree to do music production, but having some type of foundation is really helpful and allows you to work your sound in a really cohesive and a professional manner. Now as I mentioned, you don't have to be an expert in music theory. A few things you can do to help yourself move along are listed here. First, you want to learn basic chord progression. This can be immediately helpful to make your track sound more professional. Second, you want to understand scales. A basic knowledge of major and minor scales will really help you improve your melodies and make your music sound better overall. And lastly, you want to experiment with common song structures. Knowing structure can really help you keep your listeners engaged. If you listen to any popular music on the radio, regardless of the genre, you notice that there's a song structure they adhere to. So make sure you listen to the music that you're trying to produce in and really try to emulate that when you make your music production work and make it available. So really you want to try to emulate that sound that you hear, listen to that structure, and then apply it to the music that you're producing. So in short, you don't have to be an expert, but knowing basic music theory will allow you to make more intentional choices when you're creating music. Alright, here's mistake number 3, neglecting sound selection. So with this third mistake, the right sounds make a huge difference, so you want to choose your scents and sounds carefully, okay? And you can do this in a variety of ways. First, you can choose high quality samples. Better samples mean a better mix with less effort. Secondly, you can choose to layer sounds thoughtfully. What you want to do is try to avoid overlaying and stick to clean, intentional choices that make your music sound clean and good. And lastly, you want to experiment with unique sounds. You want to find sounds that make your music stand out rather than relying on the same presets everyone else uses. If you pull up a sound at any given time, there's so many tweaks and modifications you can make to that sound to make it unique that you shouldn't have a problem making this happen for your music production. So as an example, instead of throwing 5 different kicks together to create some type of sound, you can just take a 808 and a kick drum, make sure you tune those to the frequency that they sound best at, and that will give you a great opportunity to layer your sound and make it really good. That goal, whatever it is, it should be making a distinct sound that's really rich without a lot of clutter, but it's clean. The bottom line here is that good sound selection can make or break a track, so don't rush through this step. You won't regret it. Alright, mistake number 4. This happens a lot, skipping the mixdown process. So a lot of time new producers sometimes underestimate the importance of mixing. I can tell you from experience that this is really important. It's essential to make your track sound polished. I can't tell you how many times I've submitted music to different publishers and producers for different shows, and because the mix wasn't clean, it got kicked back. So if you're producing something for an individual, an artist, or submitting it to an opportunity for you to get your music placed, you want to make sure that mix is really clean and that you listen to it in different places. So the best way to do this is really to test your music out in different places. For me, I listen to it in my car, I listen to it at home, I put it on my phone, listen to it to my iPod, my AirPods. I use different forums to check my music out and make sure that it sounds good regardless of where I play it. Once you can do that, then you know your mix is great. So to make sure that your mix sounds great, there's a few things that I want to focus on to help you get to that point. First, you want to focus on balancing your levels. With this particular item, you want to make sure that all your elements that sit within your mix sit well without clashing and overpowering each other. For example, you want to make sure that your bass and your kick don't intertwine with each other and they don't have a conflict. You want to make sure your drums stand out, that your hi-hat sounds clear, and just if you're looking at a drum track overall, that's how you want to make sure things flow together. And then with your other instrumentation, make sure that the levels are in a way that they don't overpower each other, but they complement each other as the music production gets going. Okay, second, you want to make sure that you use EQ to avoid clashing frequencies. Your EQ or equalizer helps with each instrument you have and allows it to have its own space in the mix. There's certain frequencies that instruments sound better in. For instance, a guitar sounds better in one frequency range versus a keyboard or a bass or a horn, for instance. So we want to make sure you kind of spread those out in a way that ensures that the frequency that the instrument really sounds best in is focused and it allows it to harmonize better with the mix overall. Another suggestion is to experiment with panning and reverb. These tools will really add depth to your sound and make it more immersive. So say for instance you have two instruments that are clashing in the same frequency, such as the piano and the guitar. You can use panning to allow them to not conflict with each other and really complement each other in the mix. And don't forget about the panning that I was just talking about. It's really important and it allows you to create a more wider mix, more interesting mix. It just really sounds good. The bottom line here is that mixing takes practice, but it's worth spending time to learn. The difference between an average track and one that sounds great often lies in the mix and how it's delivered. So make sure you spend time in this area. Alright, and finally, mistake number 5, focusing too much on perfection. I can tell you from personal experience, it's really easy to get stuck in tweaking every detail that you're working on in a song, but this can really hold you back from completing your work. So a few steps you can take to avoid this. First, you want to set deadlines for finishing your projects. Deadlines are really helpful to allow you to avoid endless tweaking. And one thing to remember here is done is better than perfect. You focus on completing your track and that will improve your time faster and faster. And lastly, you want to seek feedback. Getting an outside perspective can really help you know when your track is ready and when it's not. So the bottom line here is that instead of spending hours trying to tweak a snare sound, for instance, aim to just finish the track and then do it as best you can and then move on. So with each project, you'll find that you'll get better, you'll learn and improve, and time will go by faster. You'll be able to complete your work in a more efficient fashion. So the takeaway here is that every track you finish brings you one step closer to mastering your craft. Don't let perfectionism bring you down. Alright everybody, those are the 5 mistakes the new producers make and how to avoid them. So let's recap. Number 1, overloading with gear and plugins. Number 2, ignoring music theory. Number 3, neglecting sound selection. Number 4, skipping the mix down process. And finally, number 5, focusing too much on perfection. Learning music production takes time and practice, but avoiding these common mistakes will set you on the right path. So if you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you're working on, which mistakes you're working to avoid, and thanks for watching. Happy producing, PTP Hustle out. See you next time.